Crossroads family. This year, Drew has challenged us as a staff to take 2 risks. Along with that, during the season of Lent, we're going to be doing devotionals every single week about risk-taking. Each week, a different staff member is going to pick a Bible character or a Bible story and look at the risks in it. And we're going to share those, and we hope that you'll be inspired to take some risks this year along with us. For the first devotional, we are going to be looking at Queen Esther, and we are, of course, going to be in the book of Esther. Specifically, we'll be looking at chapter 4, verses 6 through 17. Before we get started, I'll give you just a little backstory on who Esther is. So Esther is a queen chosen by King Xerxes, and what he doesn't know, or anybody else in the kingdom, is that she is Jewish. 2 more characters that are prevalent in our story are Mordecai, who's the cousin of Esther and kind of like her caretaker in some ways, and Haman, who's the right-hand man of the king. Haman falls into even more favor with the king when he saves the king's life. However, this was actually done by Mordecai and not Haman, but Haman ends up taking the credit. When this happens, Haman wants everybody to bow down to him. However, Mordecai refuses because he's Jewish. This makes Haman hate Mordecai, and he isn't satisfied with just killing Mordecai, but he wants to kill all of the Jewish people. Haman sends out word to the entire kingdom that on this certain day they will kill all the Jewish people. When Mordecai finds out about this, he begins to protest. And Esther sends people to find out what's wrong. They come back to her, and Mordecai says that you have to go to the king and you have to save your people. But Esther says she can't do that. If she goes to the king without being summoned, she will be killed. So Mordecai comes back and he pleads with her even more. And in verse 14, he tells her that if she doesn't save the Jews, someone will. And he also appeals to her by saying that maybe this is the reason she is queen. He tells her that maybe this is why God has made her queen with King Xerxes, is so that she can save her people. She can save the Jews. This really appeals to Esther, and she says, okay, I'll do it. And then she says, if I perish, I perish. So Esther takes the risk, and she goes to King Xerxes, and she invites him and Haman to a dinner banquet. Now, what happens at this dinner is nothing really that special. She invites them to a dinner the next night, but what happens afterwards is what really stands out. After the first dinner, Haman is just filled with anger, and he wants nothing more than Mordecai dead. He has people set up a stake, and the next morning they're going to kill Mordecai. At the same time, King Xerxes is having people read the record of his reign, and he kind of sees that it was actually Mordecai who saved his life and not Haman. At the second night of the banquet, Esther comes clean to King Xerxes that she's actually Jewish. And she tells him all about Haman's plan for the Jews. After hearing this, King Xerxes is so angry at Haman, he has him killed on that same pole that he built to kill Mordecai. Esther then pleads again for her people to be saved, and the king lets Mordecai send out a decree in his name, and all of the Jews are saved. When it comes to taking risks, there's a few Bible verses that really stand out in this. The first one being verse 16. Here Esther says, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Esther knows the risk that she's taking going to the king, but she's willing to do it to save her people. The second verse that stands out here is the end of verse 14. This is when Mordecai says to Esther, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. When it comes to taking risks, what has God set you up for? What has God aligned your paths? And maybe taking a risk makes a little more sense than we think, because he has had it planned for you this entire time. Well, Crossroads family, I hope you have a great rest of your week. We will see you on Sunday, and we will also see you back here next week to hear our next devotional on risk.